Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar as part of our Road to Rejoin series. And the title of tonight is Brits Abroad, the British Perspective from the EU. I'm delighted to have Sue Wilson from Remain in Spain and Debbie Williams, who is founder of the award-winning group Brexpats Hear Our Voice. I'm just going to give a little bit of a bio for each of them. So Sue Wilson from Remain in Spain. For those of you who don't know, Remain in Spain was born the day after the 2016 Brexit referendum, and Sue Wilson has been chair of Remain since September of that year. She is an active pro-European campaigner focusing on the rights of UK nationals living in the EU. She believes Brexit was a catastrophic act of self-harm and the UK's rightful place is at the heart of Europe. I'm sure we can all agree with her there. Sue also campaigned for the restoration of voting rights for disenfranchised overseas voters, and there has been movement on that, so I'm sure that will be one of the topics of discussion later on. She's also made public speeches against Brexit in both the UK and Brussels and writes regular press articles in both the UK and Spain. She is retired and lived in Spain with her husband and 4 cats, having moved to Spain in 2007. Debbie Williams is founder of the award-winning group, as I said, Brexpats Hear Our Voice, winner of the European Citizens Prize 2017 and currently lives in Spain. Originally from Llanelli, Wales.
Really?
Have I said that wrong? Go on.
I'll give you that.
Okay. I used to go to Wales when I was a kid on walking holidays, so I thought I'd have a good shot at that. She has lived in Germany. She has lived in Germany, Belgium, and Netherlands. Debbie has participated in and provided expert input on citizens' rights in committee meetings, select committee meetings, and expert panels. She's also presented to the Dutch Parliament, the European Parliament, and the Spanish Ministry of Justice. She has also attended high-level meetings in the European Commission and Westminster. Also, she has participated in roundtable events and embassy meetings in the Netherlands and Spain. She regularly engages with other groups, stakeholders, MC officials, and political representatives. She is also one of the co-editors of the book In Limbo, along with Elena Remegi, who was on a few weeks ago, and several other editors. She is also an aviation specialist, having worked with 4 companies in 8 different and diverse areas. All right, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it up to you guys. Sue, would you like to speak and tell us a bit about yourself and your campaign?
Sure. Well, as Tamsin has already said, we've been around for 5 years now. We've got 6,000 members in our private Facebook group, and we've got about 23,000 followers on Twitter. And all of our members in our group are all Remainers. There are many groups across the EU that have both Remainers and Leavers in them, but we made a conscious decision at the beginning, and we've never seen any reason to change it, that we wanted to have an environment where we could really find out what Remainers in Spain really felt like, because we've seen groups where there's been mixed Remainers and Leavers together, and they can get very toxic, and that toxicity actually sometimes prevents proper dialogue or prevents us from finding out what some of the real issues are. So that was a conscious decision at the beginning, and it's one that we've still stuck with. But obviously on Twitter, then it's open to the public, so you know it's fair game. I've also been involved in a court case, as has Debbie. I'm sure she'll fill you in on that one. When I took Theresa May to court over the illegality of the referendum. We didn't win, but we did manage to prove a few points that keep coming back to hit us in the face. I've also presented to the House of Commons EU committee, or the Brexit committee that used to be run by Hilary Benn, and more recently to the new House of Lords European Affairs Committee, who we were very pleased to see started their programme as the new group by focusing on citizens' rights. So it's great that that's still at the top of the table. Now, my main focus has always been to campaign against Brexit, But obviously a lot of that work is involved in citizens' rights, and now there's a lot more focus on that because we have to make sure that the rights that have been agreed in the withdrawal agreement are protected, and that where there are gaps, we keep fighting for those rights that we've lost. But while we're doing that, obviously for British citizens who live in Europe, those are rights that we've all lost. So we see our campaign as not just being about those of us that live in Europe, but being about all British citizens, because we are all the losers because of Brexit. It's not just people in Spain or the Netherlands or Germany, it's the people in the UK that have lost so much because of Brexit. So that fight will continue. We have to keep holding the government to account, because it doesn't seem as though there's many politicians doing that for us at the moment.
Yeah.
One of the things that we frequently need to do when we represent Brits abroad is to make sure that people understand who we are. We dislike the term expats because it creates this difference between us and EU citizens in the UK, for example. We are immigrants in a foreign country in exactly the same way as EU citizens are in the UK. And until it's the norm to call those people expats, then we don't want to be called expats either, because we don't want to be identified as different or, more importantly, superior to anybody else. We are immigrants living in a host country that thankfully makes us feel a lot more welcome than the UK makes EU citizens feel. There are also lots of misconceptions about what makes up the British citizens in the EU. It's commonly perceived that in Spain, especially, you know, we're all pensioners. We all live on the coast. Most of us, you know, play golf or bridge or spend all our times in bars festooned with Union Jacks. And that is very far from the truth. And even when we manage to get that across in a newspaper article, we are still illustrated by photographs that go against the whole point that we've just been trying to prove, because we see the same photographs over and over again. It's a bar in Benidorm or a bar in Malaga. And when there are photographs of Brits in Spain, they tend to be people on the beach. They're not even people who live here, they are tourists, so totally unrepresentative. In actual fact, the majority of people who live in the EU are under 45, and only 20% of British citizens in the EU are pensioners. So this idea that we're all retired, all wealthy, all got second homes and all swan about, I'll let Debbie explain that one to you later, is completely inaccurate. So we are constantly trying to battle, not just with the government to get our voices heard, but also with the media and with the British public in general, who see something that is not the truth. Mm-hmm. I'll leave that one there because I'm sure Debbie has much more to say on that subject as well. So
thank you, Sue.
I'll hand over.
Can I just say to put your questions in the chat? I think actually Richard has mentioned this. There's a Q&A button to post your questions for Sue and Debbie, and once the questions have started to appear, please vote for the best questions using the thumbs up, and I'll select the most popular ones to put to the panelists. So over to you, Debbie.
Hi, before I start, I just want to say to everybody, I've got a very, very bad head tonight. I'm not feeling so good, so bear with me if I mumble or anything. I've taken a paracetamol, so hopefully I'll be all right. So who am I? Well, I'm Debbie Williams. Where do I live? Spain. What's it like to live in Spain? Well, it's the same as living in the UK, but sunnier. What have I done today? I went to the shop, did some shopping, took the dog for a walk, dropped my daughter off in town, picked the dog's poo up in the garden, cleaned the house, did some prep for today, did some tweeting, did a lot of campaigning. I'm not working full time, but my husband is, but he's in Germany at the moment. So yes, it's a normal. We're just you somewhere else. This is how I put it. And I'd like to get the elephant in the room out of the way, okay? So you mentioned the word expats. The group is called Brexpats Hear Our Voice. I named the group the day after the referendum, and I'll tell you a little bit of the history of it. I watched the referendum results come in and I was aghast. I was living in Belgium at the time. And in the morning, two of my friends that lived in the UK that also lived in Belgium, they Skyped, and we were on Skype for about 2 or 3 hours, and they were really, really upset, as was I. And I said, well, we've got to do something about this. I mean, this is ridiculous. What's going to happen to us? And they said the same thing, and especially Magda, Julian and Magda, because Magda is Polish living in the UK. So I named the group Brexit and Expatriates. It's not British expatriates, because I wanted to be inclusive of all those affected by Brexit. Of course, now the word expatriate, actually, I'll just get my little booklet out here. I'm working on a terminology, migration document terminology, if I can find it, or it doesn't really matter. I think you all know it's more focused on the country that you've come from. Now, this word, an immigrant, and okay, as derogatory terms, and I have discussed it. I've had on Twitter from our own about answering. So please have a think. If you know anybody who does that, who goes in on the attack, ask them to find out about what we've been doing first before we do it. I want to reclaim all these names, these words, and have a really proper, in-depth conversation about migration. Okay, I'm not saying we're not going to change the name of the group. Actually, that's in motion because Brexit has happened. We need to move away from that, and we need a new focus. But we can't rebrand and rename until we've got our remit. So that is on the cards. Okay, but for now, let's stop using these terms as weapons in this migration wars. We are all people. Terms immigrant is not one EU citizen has said to me about the word expatriate in a negative way, not one. And in fact, in Limbo Project, they come in and defend us, thankfully, when that happens. So I just want to make that quite clear. That's where it stands. Everybody that uses these words and gets upset by them, you are being manipulated, okay, as well. So that's my stance on that, whether you agree on that's my opinion. So that's what I wanted to say about. We moved under free movement law, legally resident here. As I say, I've been a highly mobile, I've moved to Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, and Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands actually twice because of my husband's job. And of course, he can't do that anymore because we don't have freedom of movement and cross-border working. And I'll come on to that a little bit about what we've been doing about that as well, because of course that was promised to be discussed in the future relationship, and of course it's never happened. So there are lots of us living within the single market but not allowed to work in it anymore. So Brexpats Hear Our Voice. I started it in 2016. The group is fairly small, but we've been very highly active within the Remain campaign in the UK as well. I know lots of people, I recognise a lot of names, and it's been a pleasure working with so many wonderful people. Unfortunately, we didn't get what we wanted, and our group is very pro-European. And, we did win the European Citizens Prize in 2017, although we haven't, I'm only now starting to shout it from the rooftops because I think it's quite important. We are probably the last British group to win it, actually. And it was in recognition of a concrete expression of the fundamental values of the European Union. So we're very pleased and honoured by the European Parliament to be given the award for those reasons, that we share the same values, which are really important, and which is what I think we need to reclaim similar values for all of us. So yes, we British living in Europe, we mustn't also forget that the British population, the British population as in overseas population, was one of the biggest in the European Union before we left the European Union. Nearly 5 million of us live overseas. And they're not all Brexit voters, most of them are not, and every single one of them, even those living in Australia, are in some shape or form affected by Brexit. So please remember that. We're not all rich and privileged, as Sim said. You know, things have moved on since the old days of the Raj, you know, and we mustn't go back there again. It's like talking about the war again. God, it's tedious. You know, people used to move before had to have money because of visa laws, or they did it illegally. And you know, national laws, national immigration laws in all countries have changed with the onset of the internet and fingerprinting and all as it was previously. And now we've left the EU, we seem to be back to those old days for British citizens who want to move abroad. It's a travesty. It really, really is. But as I say, there are 5 million of us living all over the world. One of the biggest diasporas in the European Union, as it was, and there are 1.2 million. Those are the figures the government give out. And of course, the EU citizens in the UK, 3.9 million of them, all these people directly affected because they've already moved by Brexit and their rights. And of course, all of you in the UK, 66 million of you, that makes an awful lot of people that have had rights removed against their will. You know, it really is. And the British government have got history on this. I mean, you just think of Hong Kong. And you can go back in time, and it's happened time and time before. There's some very interesting webinars around at the moment that can explain that. But okay, so I've bumped my gums long enough. There's loads that I'd love to talk about, but I just wanted to make the point that we are just people like everybody else that have just happened to move, mostly for work. And in our group, it was first for work, second for love.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. And thanks for clarifying that. Did we actually decide where the word expatriate comes from? I think you were looking to see, because I wasn't actually clear myself.
Let me see if I can find it. I've got so many.
Was it seen as a derogatory term? Has it just been used? You know, has it been sort of reappropriated somehow?
Yes, it's been weaponized.
Yeah.
Actually, like most of the migration terms. I mean, you talk about, I mean, Brexit is all about immigration at the end of the day. And that's what it was all about. I'm just trying to see if I can find I've started this little book. Because of course, I'm just going to use a very simplistic, I can't find it, simplistic definition. Hey, bear with me.
Can I ask you, Sue, while you're looking for that, what's the mood like in Spain now? Wait, are you close to each other geographically?
Yes, we're walking distance.
You are. Where are you? I don't think you. Where are you in Spain?
We're in the Valencian community.
Valencia.
Debbie and I met originally when we both gave evidence to Hilary Benn's committee in January 2017. At the time, she lived in the Netherlands, and I was in Spain already. We met then, and then we subsequently met in Brussels and in Westminster. Over the years, we worked together more closely and we became friends. And then when Debbie and her husband were looking for a move to Spain, they visited my town on their way to where they were going and fell in love with the place. So we're now not just fellow campaigners and friends, we're now also neighbours.
Ah, lovely.
So I can't get away from her no matter where I go.
And neither would you want to, I should imagine. And so what is the mood like? I mean, after, obviously there was a lot built in the build up since the result. There was a thought that maybe we'd get people's vote. We were very close to it at one point, and then obviously that came crashing down. And what's the feeling like?
I would say it's quite mixed. There are as there will be in the UK as well, there are people who are sick to death of the whole thing and just want to try and put it behind them and get on with life. And to some extent, perhaps that's a bit easier if you live in another country, because it's easy to say, well, I wash my hands of the UK. I live in Spain. It's a beautiful country. I'm welcome there. I have a good standard of living. So maybe it's time to forget about all that nonsense and put it behind me. But for many of us, that's much easier said than done. And although there was an element of relief when we got the withdrawal agreement and we got at least some of our rights protected, there's still those big gaps. I mean, obviously freedom of movement is one of them. But one thing we discovered very recently, we did a survey before I presented evidence to the European Affairs Committee a month or so ago. We did a survey of our members so that we could put together a report for the committee. And it covered the various issues you would expect people still to be concerned about, whether it's pensions or healthcare or employment opportunities or the inability to go and live or work in another country. The thing that most people mentioned above all else was a lack of faith and confidence and trust in the government. So even those deals that have been done that supposedly secure certain rights, people don't have any faith in them. They might have faith in the EU to make sure that our rights are protected under the withdrawal agreement, but they don't have any faith in the government not moving the goalposts. I mean, you only have to watch what they're doing as far as the negotiations are concerned and the way they're ramping up the rhetoric and using these ridiculous tactics or spin in the negotiations to make people think, well, the EU don't trust them. Why should we? Well, how can we believe anything they say? How can we believe that what they say is safe and secure is?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, you know, we can't see down the end of the road. We don't know what's coming in the future. And there's still that feeling of living in limbo and that insecurity that has had people worried for the last 5 years.
Sure. Well, the government have consistently undermined the truth, well, from going way back. And that's just one of the things that we have to set the record straight, really, as much as we can in articles through all the different networks that we can, and just keep telling it like it is and have to hold them to account. Debbie, did you want to come back on anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that it was the British government that set this whole business up. And I absolutely understand why everybody is concerned and focused and don't trust the British government. I absolutely agree with that. But I'm going to say something unpopular here now. The EU has not been played fair either in some respects, especially when it comes to citizens' rights. There was quite a few things that were in their gift that they didn't give. And this was all because of reciprocity. Okay, so I know the argument, the old argument, they didn't ask for it, but you've got to know this. You know, I've learned this myself. I mean, I'm still pro-EU. That doesn't mean that. I still believe in the project and what it stands for. But I mean, I have learned some hard lessons myself. So I just wanted to add that, and I'm going to be Mrs. Popular tonight, I know, but I mean, I think we've got to have an honest discussion, and that's my view.
Was that a kind of revenge tactic, or what kind of things? Can you be specific about what things?
Well, I can't be too specific, but I have sat in when I was on the British and Europe Steering Committee, and hello to those guys from there tonight. I'm in a high-level meeting at the Commission with the Article 50 negotiating team from the EU, and I heard the lawyers get into action. And I can tell you something, it was a sight to behold. I was aghast, and there were things that were being asked for that were within the EU, and I can't go into specifics because they are confidential. So, I mean, I suppose it's anecdotal, but please believe me when I say they could have. And I'm looking at EU voting rights. We have lost the right to vote in EU elections. We live here. Who represents us? MPs don't, MEPs don't, our MEPs in the countries that we live in don't. We're completely unrepresented. If it wasn't for groups like ours, then there's no voice. I mean, really, it really is appalling. It's an appalling situation. And a lot of people that live, Sue will come on to it, live in the EU and overseas, don't have a vote. Well, I have a vote and I use it. I still use it. So when people say, oh, well, you don't count, you don't live in the UK. Well, I do count because I can still vote. But I'll leave Sue, I'll leave Sue go into that. Votes for life.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be more on that discussion. I'm going to go to the Q&A now, the questions we've got. At the top, we've got Charlie Nelson's question. Is it possible to attempt another court case to prove that the referendum was illegal? So that's the most popular.
Is that Charlie?
Yes, Charlie.
Sue, shall I go first?
Sure.
I mean, Sue will talk about her case. When I went to court in 2017, initially in the Netherlands, I've got it written up here, it was about EU citizenship. And it was in the question that it was a jolly on mom case, and Joe's such a great supporter. And he took this case, and I was a plaintiff, and the group was a plaintiff. And the case was a focus on the question of inalienability of EU citizenship. If the UK leaves the EU, does it mean you lose your EU citizenship? And there was a much legal debate about it. And the other question we wanted asked is whether Brexit may be revoked under EU law. In other words, is the UK allowed to change its mind? But that had to be dropped from the pleadings, and we just went with the inalienability of EU citizenship. So the long-winded way to get around to you, Charlie, is absolutely no, I don't think we can. But there are court cases going on about EU citizenship at the moment. I think there's various ones going on, but in my opinion, I don't think that the decision can be reversed, not even in the courts.
I know it's one that Charlie and I have talked about. I'm sure, actually, Charlie, I should have let you ask that question yourself, but we will in future have people ask their own question. Sue, did you just want to come back on that as well?
I'm not sure that there's anywhere to go that we haven't already tried. I think that the main focus of our case was looking at the illegal activity that went behind the referendum, but the issue that we came up against was that it was only an advisory referendum. Had it been binding, the result could have been overturned because of the illegalities behind it. But because it wasn't a binding referendum, then the normal rules that apply to general elections, if there's any illegality, didn't apply. Now, obviously, what we tried to argue in the case was it may not have been a binding referendum, but it was treated as one. So in effect, then the law that applies to a binding referendum should have applied to this one. But it didn't wash, I'm afraid. We were told that we were both too late and too early by the same judge in the same hearing. So yes, I think it was a worthy effort, and we had to take that route to unearth some of the things that we discovered. But I'm not sure there's room to revisit that on a legal front anymore. I think that ship has sailed.
I bet it was eye-opening though, and I bet you unearthed a lot of things you didn't perhaps realize. I don't know.
Yes, and I mean I'm no lawyer, so a lot of it was stuff I hadn't even considered.
And also met some very interesting people, I imagine, involved.
Yes, and we were represented by Jessica Seymour, who you'll probably all know from Twitter. So yes, we couldn't have had a better choice of somebody working on our behalf, but it wasn't to be. Jessica
Seymour was with us a few weeks ago in one of our open forums, I think, one of our webinars that we had. So I'm going to go to the next question from Annie Bewicke Copley. I hope I pronounced that properly. Do you want to fire away, Anne?
Thank you. Yes. Sorry, my my camera's not working on my computer. It's not that I'm trying to hide from you. I am in the position of many people who have a what is dismissingly called a second home in Italy, which I've had for nearly 20 years. My plan was always to retire to it and spend half the year there and half the year back in the UK. I have family here. I have a lot of commitments in Italy. I'm involved in many ways. And so in good faith, I thought that I would be able to split my time between the two. I'm now unable to do that because I'm restricted to 90 days in every 180 days. I know that there are many other people in this situation, and I just wanted to know whether that was something that our speakers have thought about, or it's part of their campaigns, or whether they have any advice as to where we should go on that.
Thank you, Anne. Who would like to answer that one first?
So do you want me to go?
On that?
Go on, then you go first.
We do have quite a lot of people in our group that are in exactly that situation. Buying a second home and having it for many years is and has always been a way that people plan their future retirement. It's a way to get the foot on the property ladder in another country, and you know, to have somewhere to move to when you finally decide you're going to up sticks and go. But obviously that is something that's been taken away from many people now. There are people who were in Spain and in other EU countries that have had to make the decision in the last few months as to which country they want to be their place of residence. So some who may well have stayed here more than 6 months a year, and so officially should have been residents anyway, have now had to make that decision that they can't, that they won't be resident here, they still want to keep their UK residency. So it's not something we're particularly campaigning to change, because I don't think that, you know, and while we are third country nationals, them's the rules. You know, I don't see why the UK or residents of the UK should get treated any different to any other third country national. You know, this is after all the Brexit that people voted for, even though they have no idea of what all the ramifications of that vote was going to lead to. And it's also, it is affecting people's health as well, because there are people who made a habit in the winter of coming for, say, 4 months of the year to avoid the British weather for mental health reasons, to be in better weather and to, you know, to not suffer from SAD. So it is affecting people's health, but I honestly don't see that in the short term anyway, there's anything that we can do about it other than change the position we're in. We are, after all, on the road to rejoin. So if we really want to fight for some of these things that are lost, we shouldn't be expecting to be treated differently to other countries in exactly the same position. We should be fighting to get back what we had in the first place, which was the best deal going. Thank you. I heartily agree with you. And I can't imagine that Stanley Johnson's having trouble going to the double. Of course, there are, as there are with all of these things, one set of rules for us and a different set for the politicians and their families. Debbie, would you like to say something?
Yeah, Anne, thank you for your question. I'd just say before I answer that Brexpats is a European-wide group, okay, and not just Spain focused, in case everyone thought I was Spain, and Sue's got Remain in Spain, and they have members across the EU, but we have members across all of the EU countries. So Anne, it's a very, very good question. And yes, we in Brexpats are very well aware of it, and we know that you have had a hard time. A lot of people on Twitter and on social media have given you a hard time about having second homes. We also know that there's a story behind that, and it's not what people always think. You know, some people have bought this place, a little place abroad, with their little pittance of savings for the future, and now they've been completely shafted. So we are sympathetic, very sympathetic. When we were campaigning for citizens' rights, we were campaigning for the full-time residents. I will be completely honest about that and clear, and that was hard enough as it was. But I see on the chat that you've got Andrew Hesselden here tonight, and Andrew's got a group that is doing a campaign for second home owners. So if you're not in touch with him, Anne, get in touch with him. I mean, we are aware in my group, all of us, that everybody's rights have been affected, and we are sympathetic. But I suggest getting in touch with Andrew, and then Andrew can make some further recommendations.
Thank you, Debbie. I don't have a second home. I did think about it abroad. I'd always wanted to go to Greece, because that's my kind of, well, but it's never happened. And
I would just add that it is a particular group of people that get very little sympathy, because people automatically assume, you know, if you're wealthy enough to afford a second home, then why should we care about you? You know, we've got far worse problems. I
totally agree with you, and I think that's such an ugly narrative. You know, and I think
that's typical immigration narrative.
That's what Brexit has encouraged, these ugly narratives
divide and rule,
all throughout. It really is. It really is. It's culture wars and divide and rule, as you say. I mean, the only reason I haven't is because I could have. It's just organisation and things that have kept me. But I still, one day, you know, when we get back, maybe that will happen. You know, I'm not going to give up on it quite yet. Next question comes from Andra Makuaka. I hope I've said that right. Do you want to ask that question? Your question, Andra. Unmute. You need to unmute. Andra? I might have to read that question. I think I'm going to ask that question, Andra. I'm just going to read it from here. Would having citizenship from your host country make you feel safer? And how does the process compare there to the UK citizen process for EU citizens in terms of difficulty, cost, fairness, etc.? There you go. Who would like to go? Debbie, would you like to?
Sorry, is Andra, is Andra talking about citizenship or residency?
Citizenship.
Oh, I'm low, am I? I'm just going.
Citizenship. So, for instance, I'm living in Spain, so she's talking about what would it be like for me to get Spanish citizenship.
I think so.
I have no idea about all the other member states. But
yes.
first of all, having citizenship isn't necessarily a panacea for all the Brexit ills and the loss of rights. Okay, it's very helpful in some cases, but it's not quite as simple as that. But I agree that if you can take citizenship, then we've often said, well, do it. But it depends on where you live, because, you know, across the member states, it's completely different, because, of course, countries are sovereign, aren't they? And they can set their own rules. Note the sarcasm there. I think the UK has one of the highest thresholds and costs I need for citizenship, but I don't think they're alone there. I can't really say too much about that, so not very helpful, I'm afraid.
As far as citizenship in Spain is concerned, there are quite a few people in our group who have done that already or are in the process of doing that. One of the biggest justifications for doing so for a lot of people is to get back their freedom of movement rights. It means, you know, they can work, move, live in a different country. But there, as Debbie said, it's not quite as straightforward as it might seem. You have to wait a long time before you can even apply, so you have to have lived here for years. It's not that expensive, certainly not at the level that it is in the UK. There are people here who've gone through the tests that say the tests to prove you know about Spanish culture are much easier than the British equivalent. I know people have tried to do the British ones. Even British people can't answer a lot of those questions. But the big issue here is that Spain does not allow a dual citizenship. So although in theory, you can hang on to your British passport, because in actual fact, the Spanish don't take it off you. It would only be the British authorities that would do that, and you have to surrender it and pay for the privilege of giving back your British passport. But strictly speaking, you're not allowed dual citizenship. So it does present some problems in the future. Now, for example, if I was to become a Spanish citizen because I want to keep my freedom of movement, what difference is that going to make to me further down the line because I get a British state pension? what difference would it make to somebody younger who wants to go back to the UK in the future? You've probably thrown away any opportunity of working in the UK in the future because you are now a Spanish citizen. You are just another on a long list of unwanted EU citizens wanting a visa or wanting to work or live in the UK. You know, and then people have got families in the UK. You know, although I say I will never live in the UK again, I can't categorically rule that out. I have a 91-year-old mother in the UK. You know, there might be some time in the future when I have no choice but to come back. And would that be possible if I was a Spanish citizen? It certainly wouldn't be as easy. So there are ramifications of going down that route. It might solve some problems, but it might present you with others.
I can give you another example. Let's say the Netherlands. The Netherlands does not allow dual citizenship. So you have to give up, like Spain, you have to give up your British passport. Okay, so you become Dutch. Okay, that's fine. That's one example, and it's very similar to what Sue said about some of the issues. But there's a new one, Germany. Germany, since the end of transition, now if you apply for Germans, if you're eligible and apply for German citizenship as a British subject, you can only be German. So you have to give up your British passport. Now, what I want to give is an example that Jane Golding gave me from British in Europe. And I said, we were talking about the withdrawal agreement. So currently, a British citizen living in Germany who is legally resident before the end of transition and has his Article 50 card can bring his family members over under the withdrawal agreement called family reunification, the immediate family members like mother, father, grandparents, and children. Okay, so that's allowed under the withdrawal agreement. But if he became German and had to give up his British citizenship, then he comes under German national immigration law. So those family members would not be able to come under the withdrawal agreement, family reunification. So you see how complex this all is. And I'm not an expert on citizens' rights. I've just got snippets of it. But all these things, it's not easy to understand. I mean, Brexit is complex. It's ridiculous. And somebody said to me the other day, why don't you mention Greenland? And I said, okay, if I can remember it. So the story goes, in the 1980s, I think it was, Greenland is the only other country to have left the European Union, or as whatever it was called then. So they left and they only had one thing to negotiate, and that was fishing rights. It took 7 years to negotiate fishing rights. And of course, the people of Greenland did not lose their EU citizenship because they got it because of their affiliation with Denmark. So they were able to keep it. So 7 years on fishing rights. And here we are, 5 years with 779 laws and whatever it is. And poor old citizens like us, I mean, we're not as important as fish. I mean, fish is far more important than us. And I just wanted to make the case about Greenland as a comparison. One thing took 7 years to negotiate.
Yeah, the phrase "get Brexit done," or it's really one of the most challenging phrases ever invented, really. And I'm going to go on to is it Peter Burke? Yes, Peter. Do you want to ask your question? Do you want to unmute? Peter, I'm going to ask it. Oh, here you are.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, fire away.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'm an Irish expat, I have to say, migrant living in the UK, and I've been here for many years. So this doesn't currently directly affect me. It means at some point in the future. But the question is to do with people on a UK pension living in European countries, because they've been doubly hurt, first of all, by the fact that following Brexit, the pound lost significantly in value against the euro. And secondly, the fact that they seem to have very few guarantees that their pensions will retain their value. I know this has been a subject of negotiation. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on where that's gotten to and whether these problems are anywhere near resolution.
Well, Peter, the withdrawal agreement covered our pension rights. And what it says in there is that our pension rights are the same as if we were in the UK. So while it doesn't, for example, expressly promise to protect the triple lock, it does say that whatever the situation is for British pensioners in the UK is the same for us. So in future, for example, if the triple lock became a double lock, then that would apply to us as well. But as you rightly say, the biggest impact on our pensions has obviously been the exchange rate, because that's made a significant difference to people who are on a low income. I'm a state pensioner myself. That's my only income. My husband is the same. And if we were to try and move to Spain now, we would not qualify because we don't have sufficient income. So it's not just, when we think about the rights that have been lost by British citizens in Europe, we also have to think about those that would like to be British citizens in Europe, because it's not just us that suffered, it's those that wanted to take advantage of the opportunities that we had, but can't do so anymore. And that includes people who wanted to retire here. It's only the wealthy that can do it now.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Debbie.
No, I've got nothing to add on that Sue hasn't already said. She's quite right. And of course, I do know many people personally. I will just reiterate what she said, that have suffered because of the drop in the exchange rate, and that the British pension is one of the lowest in the world, I think. I can't remember what number it is, but it's absolutely appalling. So maybe that's something that, we can all join forces on and try and get changed. But I mean, it really is dreadful.
Thanks. Thank you, Debbie. I'm just thinking about the one of the biggest impacts of Brexit is the things that we've had to, the things that all of us kind of not took for granted, but enjoyed as the kind of freedoms, things that took us rights, I guess, and freedom of movement being one of them, and education. I'm on an Erasmus committee, and it's just heartbreaking to see how Erasmus Plus has just been thrown at the wayside and replaced by something so comparatively insignificant, really, and with no guarantees for any kind of longevity of the amount that's given. It's a similar kind of thing that young people are not able now to be able to enjoy those freedoms that their parents had. They've just gone, and that's kind of in the same with education in terms of that the cross-fertilization, the language, the ability to travel and to share and to the knowledge of other languages and other cultures. It's just such a narrow negative. So totally.
The children should have more opportunities than you, not less.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question, we have Colin Gordon. Colin, hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Fire away.
Thank you. Okay, well, I realise this question may be a bit kind of off marginal to the most urgent things that Sue and Debbie have been working on in their groups, but something that's very much close to the heart of the European, pro-European groups in the UK at the moment, thinking medium term, but how can we stay closer to the EU, how can we prevent the government and the Brexiters building a kind of gulf of hostility that will keep us out in the long term. So I wondered if either of you had thoughts about how pro-European British communities and civil society organisations like GfE can work to maintain positive links with pro-European citizens and organisations in Spain or elsewhere, and Spanish citizens who still regret Brexit.
Mm-hmm. I've got some thoughts. Shall I go first, Sue? And then I know you have as well. Colin, it's a really, really good question. And I think that there is a bright future. So I'm going to start on a positive note here, and that we should all collaborate and cooperate and share a common platform. We did try, a lot of us in the beginning, to do this, but it didn't work. We've all learned lessons, we've all moved on. And I think it's an excellent idea. For instance, our group, we are working, oh my gosh, it's gone out of my head. I'm in a European Parliament group, which is working on, what's it called? The Conference on the Future of Europe. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're doing that as well, I guess. So
which Richard Corbett is involved in, of course. Yes. Yep, that one, I think.
Yes, so we're involved in that directly as well. And I think that's a good, all the groups, I mean, we're COVID restricted at the moment. It would be nice, maybe, I know Grassroots, you had a big conference, didn't you, before COVID? But unfortunately, you missed a lot of groups off. It's not your fault because you don't know who everybody is. But there are a myriad of groups and pro-European groups as well that would have liked to have joined in. And I know we can't give everybody a talk or a seat, but maybe that common platform, if we have a common platform, like Mel tried to do with CoHub on Facebook at the very beginning, maybe a start, and then we can just share ideas. I mean, you know, I think we've all learned so much, and the way to do it is just share ideas and work on them. That's my view.
So are you saying, Debbie, that lots of companies, lots of groups were missed off, weren't invited, or maybe that's another conversation then, and that we have to work? Yeah,
we have that privately, but I mean, there was no malice thought there. I just don't think you knew about us, and you know, I mean, it wasn't until the event happened that we all thought, oh, what's this then? Yeah. You know, but now we know. So now we know. But that's the sort of thing that happened over the years, not just with this. That's one example.
Yeah, sure.
And I just think it's sharing, collaboration, cooperation. So sorry, Colin, I went on. I'll leave it to Sue now.
I think we have to use what's already out there as much as we can. I mean, obviously, there's the UK-EU friendship group that Terry Renker is a part of, and obviously the conference that Debbie was talking about. So, you know, trying to connect with organisations and setups that are already in place. I must admit, it's not something I've spent a lot of time doing, because it seems as though it's kind of always plan B, you know, when there's always so much firefighting to do. But I think Colin's right that it's something that we need to look at, because, you know, we're all looking at the medium to long term in terms of where we want to go or where we want to be in the future. And, you know, we have to look at steps that we can take along that route. And obviously building those relationships has got to be a good thing, because, you know, we don't see politicians doing much of that at the moment, certainly not the government. And, you know, if we can't rely on them to build up these links, then we have to make an effort to do that. And I believe that Grassroots as well are, you know, working on a twinning program as well. You know, so that's obviously connecting up towns in the UK within other parts of the EU. So I think for a lot of groups like Remain in Spain, that the focus has been so much on what's going on in the UK, or rather on the UK government. Sure. You know, I've certainly spent so much more time dealing with politicians in Westminster, and to a lesser degree in Brussels, than I have done in Spain. And it's because the Spanish ones aren't causing us any problems. So we don't need to dedicate a lot of time to building those relationships, although we probably should. It's spending all our time currently is, you know, focusing on where the problems are coming from and who's causing them. So that I think probably for a while is going to be the focus of many.
Understood.
Yeah, if I could add one thing, Sue, sorry, have you finished?
Yes.
There's one more thing, Colin, which I think is quite interesting. We've got this network of soft power, you know, those of us in the EU who have groups, we have contacts. We've built those contacts up now over 5 years. I mean, of course, we've lost a lot when the British MEPs left, but we've still got contacts. And so have the EU citizens living in the UK. And the groups like in Limbo and the 3 Million, they have contacts too. So it would be great if we could all do the sharing and start from a new start point and use those connections. I just want to say that this soft power, especially from Brits living abroad, has been neglected. And we do have a lot of influence, you know, on the quiet, not particularly in the EU, but in our local communities. You know, we did have people who were councillors and things like that.
Yeah, I feel that's a really good point there, I think, Debbie, because I feel that there's a kind of momentum of this collaboration kind of bubbling up. I certainly feel that in our Erasmus group, that this kind of building up of soft power, because there's an awful lot of disgruntled Tories out there who aren't happy, and in the House of Lords, and you know, very unhappy about what's happened to Erasmus Plus, and it being possibly the lowest hanging fruit, that we can maybe claw something back from that, and actually put pressure and shame the government into, you know, relenting. Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I just thinking about Erasmus Plus. I was just thinking, you know, do you know there's a group called Young European Voices? They're EU citizens, British citizens. They're a small group, but they're mighty. I hope you can hear me. My internet's unstable.
Yes.
I know there's a Young European movement.
Yes.
Now, all these groups have got these, because it was very hard to get the youngsters involved in this campaign, the pro-European campaign and the citizens' rights campaign. I don't know why, maybe we're on the wrong platform. But now a lot of these groups are on Instagram, and it seems to be moving. And they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of passion. So it might be worth connecting up there, because we should be making use of our languages. I mean, look at us all over here. We've all, you know, people say, oh, Brits are monolithic? We're not. Some are, but we're not.
A lot of them are monosyllabic, I think. Monosyllabic.
You know, and we're a shining example of, yeah, you know, we can even learn it when we move. We don't have to have learned it before. Not everybody, I'm not perfect, but, you know, we could encourage language learning again in the UK, together with a shared platform. So sorry, that's what I wanted to say.
Absolutely agree.
Because the young people are really important, and they've had everything stripped away from them, like the rest of us.
I think we have made contact with Young European Voices, and I know that Yem, I'm very much involved with Yem. Julius is on our Erasmus committee.
Okay.
So, you know, he's very vocal, and but also found it quite difficult initially to kind of galvanize a young voice, but I think that's changing a bit now. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is John. John, fire away.
That's me, is it?
John Gaskell.
Yes. Debbie was saying Brexit is complicated and unfair, and it certainly is. I want to ask, what's to be done when one partner, for example, has EU citizenship and the other has UK citizenship? Where are they supposed to live? Are they supposed to spend 3 months in one country and then go back to another country for 3 months and then carry on like that all the time? Similar things happen when the children may not have the same citizen rights as the parents. How are people supposed to exist like that?
Oh, John, that's such a, I mean, I've been asked similar questions like this before, and it just breaks my heart. I'd have to know more about the specifics before I could even begin to give you a sensible answer, okay? But it just, what you've just said, I mean, this has been a race to the bottom on rights, not a levelling up. And the UK immigration law that they're bringing in, the Act, is toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And nobody can live like that. So, John, if it's a personal question.
It's not, by the way. It's not affecting me. It's just just friends I know are potentially affected by this.
Yeah, they can't live like that. So they need to make a decision about where to live. Where are they now?
Well, at the moment, one is, it's a couple. They used to live partly in Spain and partly in Surrey. And now one is in Surrey and hasn't gone back to Spain because of COVID, of course, and the other one's in Spain. So it just makes things really awkward. And
I mean, there will be ways around it, depending on how they've legalised their status and their residency.
I suspect the British guy didn't actually legalise his status. I suspect. and now he's absolutely caught out by that. In Spain, I mean, legalized his status in Spain. So
but
it's
there might be other ways around this, but again, it's probably not for tonight. But you're very welcome
okay.
to message me privately if you'd like to know more, and I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to do much detail because it is a very complex issue, but it just points home how much of this is really about the personal stuff. And nothing is more personal than people's families. And families are being split up because of Brexit. I mean, we have members in our group where even the husband and wife live in different countries because they've been used to traveling between one and the other. They can't do that anymore. They can't continue to work and move about as freely as they used to. And, you know, this involves people's parents, it involves people's children. Obviously, there are family reunification things, but there's a limit to how far down that road you can resolve some of these issues. But yes, it's the personal things that are really the most upsetting when you start look at some of the damage that Brexit caused. But one point I would say to anybody who's caught out by any of these situations is please speak out, even if it's just talking to someone like in limbo, getting your voices out there, telling your stories, because it is the personal stories that help to break through with some of those people who couldn't give a damn about whether the British can fish in the Atlantic or in the Channel, or whether you can sell clams in Spain or not. You know, what matters is the personal stuff. So telling those stories is really important. So please, if you've got one, even if you want to remain anonymous, please share it with somebody and make sure that those stories get out there, that the politicians read them.
Debbie's gonna go
really,
on.
Really good link in there, Sue. We practiced that.
If you haven't already bought that book, it's there. And
I hope Eleanor is watching tonight, and Veronique and all the gang and Cozy. We're all great pals. So there's our book in limbo too. I did want to take this opportunity to read a testimony, and I couldn't decide which one, but this is the shorter one. So this is the Precious in Limbo book. And I think this one just gives you a little idea, because Eleanor and the team would like more testimonies, as Sue said. So please do send them in to the In Limbo project. They'd be delighted to hear from you, and you can be anonymous, as Sue said. So indulge me, right? It's quite short.
Go on.
So this is In Limbo, and this is the new edition. And this is a short testimony by James, who's a British citizen who lives in the UK. And he says, "My wife is the most wonderful person I have ever known. Beautiful inside and out. Funny, caring, selfless, courageous and warm. She brightens every room she enters. Many people she meets will never see that. All they see is a migrant from Lithuania."
Lovely.
And that's what we've all been up against. Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff. I'm aware that Juliet wanted to ask a question, so I'm going to give the stage to Juliet now. Are you there with Juliet?
Yeah, I am. Yes, thank you. Just following on from what was said and what Debbie Williams was saying, could we have a link up to get in touch with Debbie? One of the things that I often get asked is, what do I do? My grandchildren have been born in Spain. I haven't been able to go over and visit them. They're neither, the grandchild has to decide at the age of 1 if they're going to be British or Spanish. And in the meantime, the in-law has a relative in another EU state. So for example, they might have a father who's elderly and needing care in France, and they might have a grandchild in Spain, one of the cases I know of, and they find it incredibly difficult to divide up their allowance of 90 days. particularly if Grandad falls ill.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
Julia.
I really think we ought to capitalise on the families who actually don't talk, don't speak up, don't say, oh, you know, my dad's in Germany or Finland and I can't go and visit him in the way that I would have in the past.
Yeah, well, this is again part of the Brexit thing, and I'm sure Sue will say she covered this in her recent report as well, Juliet. But we were very, very much aware from day one about vulnerable people and families and the effects on families of the loss of rights and the loss of free movement and what the future would look like. We've not probably got time tonight to talk about the immigration bill in going back to the UK for British citizens with a EU spouse. But that's an issue. But yes, yeah, it's complicated. I suppose we can't go into specifics tonight. You're very welcome to contact me or Sue or anyone, and I'm sure that we can get you a link or something, or an email address for us out after the webinar. But yes, we're very aware of the vulnerable group, and we're also very, very aware that there's a deadline looming for British citizens living in the EU and EU citizens living in the UK. Of the 30th of June, there's Latvia, Luxembourg, Malta, and with France on the 30th of June for people to apply for their residency permit. And after that, I don't know what's going to happen. So please get the message out there. And of course, it'll be mostly the vulnerable group that will suffer from this, because maybe they're ill, they haven't got technology, they've got the wrong information, or they're waiting for somebody to contact them, which is one I hear a lot from some in the older generation. Oh, well, the British Embassy will contact me. Well, actually, no, they won't. It's very sad. So there's going to be some people falling through the gaps. And we have, of course, got children in care, which is my own personal worry and concern. Care leavers, especially British children across the EU, and who's going to monitor that. So we have raised that. So Juliet, I haven't answered your question specifically, but please contact me after. And we are very, very, very well aware of the vulnerable groups and very, very worried.
I think another point to make here is that we are seeing new groups of vulnerable people as time progresses, but the problem is we still have no idea of the scale. All we know is that the numbers of people who are likely to fall through the cracks are increasing dramatically the further we get away from the end of transition and the closer we get to deadlines, especially in those countries that have got very short deadlines. But we really have no idea how many people are going to fall foul of the system and find themselves as undocumented migrants, or, for a word I know people don't like to use perhaps, but illegal immigrants, for want of a better word. They will be undocumented migrants with no rights, with no money in many cases, and with no access to any healthcare. And we still don't know the scale of that problem. And we may not for some time.
I think Fiona's saying she's got the numbers. Thousands have not yet registered. Is that what you're saying, Fiona? Have you got the numbers there?
Yes, thousands have not yet registered in France or Malta. This is Fiona. And we have the numbers for UK and EU in the third joint report from last week. Can I ask?
I mean, in Spain, we don't know how many people are how many Brits are even in Spain.
Fiona Godwin is coming up as a question quite soon. I just wanted to ask you, there's been a distinct lack of empathy from this government in terms of the fallout from Brexit and in terms of mental health, I think, and what this effect is having on lots of ordinary people's lives. What kind of support is there? Support other than your groups, networks in Spain, or is there any kind of,
there are support groups that are funded by the British government. They're called the UK National Support Fund.
Okay.
In Spain, there are 3 groups that cover Spain. Some countries don't have any support at all, where there are smaller groups of British citizens. In Spain, there are 3, and they seem to be doing a reasonable job in areas where they are able to focus and where they are geographically.
Yeah.
But a lot of the support is focused very much on the large conurbations, and not all Brits live anywhere near a large conurbation, and not all, especially elderly and vulnerable Brits, have access to social media or even the internet.
Sure.
So, you know, if you can't meet these people in person and they're not just around the corner, then there are huge gaps where people are not getting the support that they need.
So it's inadequate at best.
It's as a general rule over the whole country, yes. There are areas where it's working very well and they're doing a good job, but there are areas where they're not.
It doesn't cover all Spain, as Sue said, and the same in France. It's only pockets, and the same in other countries. And it's only a hand-holding exercise for residency. It's not mental health or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, there is no support.
Let's help you do your paperwork. It's not how do you deal with the issues that.
Okay, well, I'm sure this conversation will continue, because, you know, this is early days really in terms of mental health and the effects of Brexit. I'm going to move on to Andrew Hesselden. Do you want to ask your question, Andrew?
Hello, I'm not sure if anyone can hear me.
Yes,
we can.
Oh, good. Sorry, I wasn't sure the microphone was working. Anyway, yeah, it's following on from Anne's question, and I thank you very much for raising awareness of the second homeowner issue, which is really wide-reaching. It ranges from holiday homers at one end of the scale to freelancers and authors and people who literally work from country to country and touring people on the other end of the scale. My question is, has the EU or the UK government ever reached out or asked about or thought about the impact on second homeowners? You know, and by that I mean people who live in their country between 0 and 6 months of the year.
No.
Yeah, it's a very short answer, Andrew.
Very
right.
I concur.
It certainly doesn't seem like it, to be honest.
I mean, they haven't reached out very much in the last 5 years at all to any of us.
No.
So the fact that they would look at such a specific group, perhaps a group that they would consider perhaps more privileged than most of us.
And that's a big problem, isn't it? Because we have that against us, as you raised earlier.
Yeah, it is. And it's most unfair because, you know, it could be that, I mean, when I moved to Spain, my original plan was to buy a second home. I soon found out I couldn't afford to do that. So the only way to do that was to sell my home in the UK, buy something very small there. So I could buy something very small here. So, you know, I might have had 2 homes very briefly. I don't anymore. I might have had 2 homes very briefly, but those 2 added together were less than most people's 1 home.
Exactly.
So just having 2 properties doesn't mean you're wealthy. It just means you've split your money in half.
And that's a really fantastic point, Sue, because I mean, so many of our members, you know, have a very modest house in the UK, have a very small apartment in Spain and or Italy or wherever, and they consider themselves to actually be, you know, partway through a 5 to 10 year moving process. You know, they're doing 0 to 6 months of the year at the moment to see how it works for them, and they feel very, very left high and dry. The reason I ask is I have a theory that this group of people is really, really big. I saw a statistic once that there are 800,000 properties in Spain owned by British people. So if there are 350,000 registered residents, I kind of wonder if there is a way of leveraging this very large number of people who must be quite quietly outraged by what's going on, that whether actually this could actually help, you know, Brits that are more permanently in Europe, because this is a really burning platform for bringing back freedom of movement of people, which I agree is not particularly realistic right now, but I do wonder whether we could do more to leverage all these people who are not late to the game in realizing that they're affected, but a lot of them genuinely thought Boris would have arranged something in his deal at Christmas, and it's only now they're actually realizing that they are affected now.
Well, you've made a start, Andrew, haven't you?
We're starting, we're trying.
You've got to get everyone together, and you've got to get your remit and your plan of action and start lobbying and advocating and joining any common platform that you can.
Yes.
Of course, you know why that we focused on British
of course.
living in the EU permanently.
Yes.
And can I just bring in this? You might be interested, Andrew, and anyone else who's listening. There are many of us, myself included, who have lost our livelihoods because of the loss of freedom of movement and had to change their lives. And Zoe Adams-Green and myself, Nick Gammon, Emma Gledhill and Kim Sanderson have set up a new group called Cross Border Services. It might be worth having a look at that at our website. And also there's another group called Carry On Touring. I'm not part of it. We've just started talking to them, and they're worth having a look at as well, and maybe making contact with them. And
I'm working with them already. Yes.
All right, okay, so you know, I had a call with them last week.
Brilliant.
Yes. But as I say, we stand here ready, and my research suggests that it's the perception that second homeowners voted for Brexit, blah, 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 that just doesn't seem to hold water. It doesn't seem to be true. So I think there are lots of people standing here ready to work with you guys to continue fighting Brexit as far as we possibly can, and the impacts of it.
The impacts of it, Brexit's done, I'm afraid.
Well, yes, quite.
But not for us. It'll never be done.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm aware of the time. Do you have enough time for one more question? Yeah. So I think I'm allowed. Joe Pye. Yeah. Here we go.
Well, I had a number of questions, but I'm not really sure which one to go for. Whenever I watch these programs, on catch-up TV about people who, move out to Spain and it's going to be their forever home, and I think, oh my God, how on earth did what are you going to do when, Brexit happens? Do you know how many UK citizens in Spain cannot afford to return to the UK?
Haven't a clue.
No.
This is part of the problem, and this is a problem that we've had. It's not just in the last couple of years, it's a problem that's been ongoing for many years. When I started looking at the numbers, it was probably soon after the referendum. I think at the time it was something like 280,000 registered Brits in Spain. That's now 380,000. So since the referendum, 90,000 more people have actually registered, and 20,000 alone registered last year. Now, it was always assumed that the number of around 300,000 was a significant underestimate of how many Brits actually lived here. And it was thought to be 2 or 3 times that number, possibly as many as 1 million. Now, some of those would have been people who didn't live here all year round, but lived here a significant amount of the time. But we still don't know. Some of those people now have been forced into making a decision about whether they want to be UK residents or whether they want to be Spanish residents. So some would have left already, and lots more have come at the last minute to get here before Brexit because they expedited plans for some future retirement they were thinking of. But we still don't know the numbers. We assume it's still at least twice the numbers that we know about. But how we find out that, I don't know, but the longer we wait, presumably the more people will get registered. It's getting easier to register now because there was a huge demand for appointments originally. So it was very slow, but the process is speeding up now. But how many people are still going to fall through the cracks? And even if those people who haven't yet registered or haven't even tried to yet register wanted to do so, some of them are not going to meet the criteria because they didn't do what they needed to do before the end of the transition period. So
What did
They're
they
going to
need
be
to
the
do?
people at risk.
Can you sort of tell us what they needed to do?
Well, in order to be considered for residency, they had to be living here legally before the end of transition. Now, that meant they had to have a certain amount of money in the bank. It wasn't much by comparison to what they're asked to have now as third country nationals. But the main sticking point for many was they were supposed to have a health cover.
Yeah.
That was part of living legally in Spain, was having health cover. Now, that does not mean being a British citizen, living here as a tourist and using your EHIC card. That was not considered health cover. Anybody who was living here should not have been using an EHIC card to get healthcare. So people knew that the rules were going to change on the 1st of January. So people started to get their affairs in order. They got themselves private healthcare from the 1st of January because they knew they were going to need it for this year if they wanted to become residents. But what they didn't appreciate was, by doing so, they proved they didn't have legal health cover before the 1st of January. What they should have done was taken out healthcare last year. So those people might have thought they were taking all the right steps and getting their affairs in order, only to find that they haven't. And there's also a knock-on effect with people who have to exchange their driving licenses to Spanish licenses by the end of June. You can only do that if you're a legal resident. If you haven't got your residency yet, even though there's no deadline for getting your residency, you are going to fall foul of switching your license by the end of June, which means in order to get a Spanish license, you will have to take a Spanish driving test in Spanish. So there are all sorts of ramifications by not doing things when you're supposed to. Yeah, it's an absolute minefield. And these are just things that we know about. I'm sure there are a dozen other issues that haven't even come to light yet that we're going to find out about in the next few months.
Debbie, did you want to say anything? Thank you, Joe. Good question.
No, I think Sue covered it. I was just thinking to myself then, I know we haven't got much time. I mean, that brings up what Sue's brought up, how difficult the situation is. But I mean, I just want to get the message across here now. You know, there is a deadline coming up, as I said earlier. I mean, please do tell people if you've heard, you know, they live in those countries to register. But there are people who are going to fall through the nets, and there is going to be bad press about it. Please, 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 all of you listening here and watching tonight, don't fall into the trap of the divide and rule like we started with. We are just people, you know, and we're not just in Spain. We're all over the place in all sorts of jobs, from cleaners to lawyers. You know, we're just lorry drivers. I mean, it's not like it was before. So please don't fall into the trap of saying, oh, well, good enough for them. They deserved it. You know, they didn't do it in time, because you don't know people's personal stories. And the same for EU citizens in the UK. Stand up for them, defend them, please, I ask you. And that's my positive message.
I can't think that anyone who is watching this webinar would have those thoughts, but I certainly know if I'm in Valencia, I'm going to be looking up you two and be sharing.
We'll have a good night.
I'm definitely going to do that. Finally, just one question that I had for you is, have you noticed in Spain any, like, I don't know, any difference toward you or from Spanish people? Has there been any feeling? I don't know, not at all.
I haven't noticed any negativity, but then, you know, I live in a small friendly town, so maybe I'm not the best person to answer that question.
Well, I'm glad.
The main thing that we get from the Spanish is just this incredulity that we have done something so stupid.
Yes, well, I think that's all over Europe, isn't it?
Well, yes.
I was.
Spain are so proud of being EU members. It has done so much for the country, and they cannot understand why anybody would throw that away. It just, they're bewildered by the whole thing.
I know.
So,
I was in Berlin last October, just before, you know, the transition period ended. In fact, the person I was performing in a show, and the person I was performing with, 25 years my junior, ended up moving to Berlin just before the transition period. She just got in there, and I was like, I was devastated. that I didn't have that, I have dependents, and I have a 9-year-old, and I couldn't just kind of go and do that, but I was trying to work it out. I was really trying to work it out, thinking, do I want to stay in this country? So yeah.
I mean, there are some problems with some systems, some teething problems with the implementation of the withdrawal agreement in some countries, to be honest. But I wouldn't say that we have the hostile environment generally.
Yeah.
And of course, I can't speak for the whole demographic, but I mean, from what I've heard, we don't have what the EU citizens in the UK have to put up with, although some of us might when we want to go back with our EU partners.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of German and French, particularly friends here in the UK, and I felt just devastated for them, embarrassed, ashamed, all of those things. I'm sure you've heard that many times before. Anyway, this conversation will continue. I'm going to draw it to a close there, but I do want to remind all of you who are watching, please to share the deadline for the settled status and get that out there on Twitter, on social media, Facebook, on every kind of platform that you can. That's not very long away. That's less than 3 weeks away. So please get that message.
Could I just ask a favour before we sign off?
Yes.
Some of you may well have heard of Harry Schindler, the veteran campaigner who has been campaigning for Votes for Life for the last 25 years. He's going to be 100 in July, and Remain is putting together a video of greetings from as many groups as we can find. Now, we've already got Richard to agree to do it on behalf of Grassroots. Naomi's going to do it on behalf of Best for Britain. But we don't just want the big groups, we want some small ones as well. So anybody on here who would like to add to our collection of 15 to 30 second videos that we can put together as a greeting for Harry's 100th birthday, please contact me and we'll send you all the details by email. Thank you, that's my pitch.
Lovely, that's a lovely thing to end on. And actually, I do have to say, before we close, please remember that next Wednesday, we have another webinar, and we have Andrew Adonis from the European Movement, Jackie Jones, ex-MEP, Julie Ward, ex-MEP, plus 2 Erasmus alumni. And the title is, as you may have guessed, it's on the subject of Erasmus. It's entitled Bring Back Erasmus. How do we successfully campaign to keep this item on the agenda? So please do join us. I'm sure you'll all want to join with me, and a round of applause for our 2 guests today. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an excellent webinar, and I'm very serious about that drink in Valencia. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you. See you next week. Bye. Bye-bye.